Two questions for oral answer, and the first question is in the name of the Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable David Parker.
To the Minister for ACC, will the government support an urgent law change to extend the date for full funding of ACC accounts?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, yesterday I stated my intent to introduce legislation to push out the full funding date. The member is wrong to present the extension of full funding as a solution to the challenges facing ACC and the growth in levies. All it changes is when we pay, and if costs doubled, as they did more so than that in Labor's tenure, at some point levies must follow suit.
The Honourable David
Speaker,
Parker.
Does the Minister accept that if the date for full funding is extended to 2019, then the big hikes in levies and registration fees that the Minister referred to yesterday will be substantially avoided?
The Honourable Dr
Mr
Nick
Speaker,
Smith.
yes, if the full funding date is moved forward, we can make a difference in some of the accounts, but not all. I would also note, though, that by pushing the full funding date out, the solvency ratios in the accounts does not improve, in fact deteriorates, and furthermore the debt goes onto the Crown balance sheet. The idea that simply pushing that full funding date out solves the problem in ACC is misleading and wrong.
Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, is the Minister surprised by Labor's proposals for deferring full funding to take pressure off the motor vehicle levy?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, yes I am. Last July, Labor increased the ACC motor vehicle levy and petrol taxes by $50 at a time when the cost of petrol was over $2 a litre. Officials presented with this option. They declined it then. How they changed their spots when in opposition.
The Sue Bradford.
To the Minister, is it true that Business New Zealand and Treasury are currently the sole drafters of the terms of reference for a full government review of ACC?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
No, that is completely false. I have not had any discussions, nor have officials with either of those organisations about the changes that the government will need to make in ACC. What I do wish to reassure the member is that this government is absolutely determined to ensure that New Zealand has a 24/7 accident insurance scheme that is both affordable and is going to be able to be sustainable in the long term.
Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what other reports has the Minister received of misleading information about ACC's financial position?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, yesterday I noticed that Mr Parker was keen to focus on the solvency ratio in 1999. I note, and the House would note, that the scheme-only decision to move to full funding was made in 1998. So 25 years of residual funding had to be taken into account at that time, and the idea that somehow it all be paid off in 1 year is simply absurd.
The Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, will deferring the full funding date resolve the costs facing families from the blowout in ACC's accounts?
Mr
Honourable
Speaker,
Dr Nick Smith.
no. Of the $2,400 increase in projected levies for families, 73% of that comes from the earners account. The earners account has a very small residual component, and so extending out the full funding period has negligible effect. The average family would still face increases of over $2,100, even with the proposal being advanced by Mr Parker.
The Honourable David Parker.
Will the government commit to extending the date for full funding in time to prevent the large and unnecessary increases in motor vehicle levies this July, or will he let them go up unnecessarily as he did with the employer levy before Christmas?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, what I can assure the House is that this government is far more mindful of the costs on motor vehicle owners, on households and on businesses of ACC than the previous government ever was, and furthermore, this government is prepared to make the changes to secure the long-term future of ACC rather than it being compromised by the sorts of policies that the previous government had.
Point of order.
The Honourable David Parker.
Point of order. That question was really very simple. Was it going to be in time for the July increases or not? And again, we had a diatribe from the Minister.
Order. I accept the point the member's made. I invite him to repeat his question because there was no mention of timing in the answer.
Thank you. Will the government commit to extending the date for full funding in time to prevent the large and unnecessarily large increase in motor vehicle levies this July, or will he let them go up unnecessarily as he did with the employer levies before Christmas?
Honourable Dr Nick Smith. Point of order, the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I'd ask you to consider later today very carefully the transcript of answer given by Dr Nick Smith, in answer to that question that was first asked. Because if we're going to have to answer questions on the basis of supposition in the question, then I think we're in some trouble. So your reference, sir, to the dates is unreasonable.
Order. The part of the question that involved supposition did not require an answer. The bit that was very clear in that question related to the timing of a decision, and the Minister made no attempt to address that in any shape or form. That's why I invited the Minister to repeat the question, and the member to repeat the question, and the Minister
point of order.
for ACC is point of order.
Happy to.
Next.
Sorry.
Point of order.
Mr Speaker, the change in legislation with respect to the motor vehicle levies is not going to be necessary for this government to provide for a lesser level of levy increase than proposed by officials.
Order. What the Minister has just said is not a matter of order. The Minister may choose to incorporate that in an answer to the member, but the member's question was very clear, and I invite the Minister to answer it.
Point of order.
Point of order, the Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the member's question is based on the supposition that the only way I can limit the cost of the motor vehicle levy increase is to change the legislation. That is not correct, and that is why it is possible for the government to make a lesser levy increase.
The Minister is attempting to answer the question to me. It is the honourable member's question. I invite him to answer it. He's giving perfectly good answer now. If you'd only done that previously, everything would have been in order. And I've invited the Minister to answer the member's question. He doesn't have to if he doesn't wish to.
I thought I was. I'll answer it again. The member's supposition...
Order. The Minister was trying to answer it by way of a point of order. He cannot do that because it is not a matter of order. He just needs to answer the question, not raise a point of order.
Mr Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Supposition in the member's question that the only way in which I can contain the levy increases on motor vehicle owners is a change in legislation is not correct. The government's move to push out the full funding date will be in legislation I intend to introduce into the House this year so that it can be taken into account in the levy increases at the end of this year.
Supplementary question, Honourable David Parker.
Does the Minister accept that the PricewaterhouseCoopers report showed that 1.8 of the $2.5 billion increase in ACC liabilities is a result of decreasing investment returns caused by the global economic crisis and not by generous entitlements, as claimed by him?
The Honourable
Mr.
Dr
Speaker,
Nick Smith.
The decrease in investment returns is actually quite small. The key factor in the latest report... that has increased the liabilities has actually been the reduction in the discount rate. Exactly. Even Dr Cullen is now agreeing with me. But the fundamental issue that members opposite, of course the discount rate went up in 2005 and 2006 and is in the report that was presented to the House on Tuesday made plain that the underlying reason for the huge increase in liabilities is that the fact that the costs of the scheme have more than doubled per year.